Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are going to give people a couple more minutes to hop on, and then we'll get started in a minute. Can everyone hear me okay? And can you see the slides? You can just pop something in the chat like, yes, you're good. Okay, great. Hi, welcome. It's funny because I can't see you, but I can see you in the chat. So just some logistics before we get started. There will be a replay of this webinar when we're done. So if you want to watch it again, or if you miss it, there will be a link emailed to you so that you can catch any part of it again at the end. And then it's also going to be posted on the Desert Wellness YouTube channel. So you can go like and subscribe to the Desert Wellness YouTube channel, and you can check it out there as well. And then just because I'm going to go through a lot of information in a short period of time, I'm going to say hold your questions until the end, or you can put them in the chat, but I'm not going to answer them until we get through all the material, just to make sure that we get through everything we need to. So if questions come up throughout, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I'm not ignoring you in the chat, but we'll circle around at the end, and I'll get to your questions at the end. Okay, looks like we have a pretty good group going here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Transforming Stress webinar. I'm Keira Kilmeyer. I'm a licensed clinical counselor here in the Valley, and I have been a patient at Desert Wellness for the last few years. So I'm so excited to be teaming up with them to do this webinar today. Yeah, so a little bit about me. I like to say, or here, I'll get the slides going. I like to say that I love helping overwhelmed, exhausted, and disconnected women reclaim their lives. In my clinical experience in private practice, mainly I work with trauma, childhood attachment, grief processing, and life transitions. So we typically experience somewhere around 45 life transitions by the time we're in our 50s and 60s. So that's a little bit different than the like major one-time midlife crisis. It's a lot more like multiple changes throughout different seasons of reevaluating. So when women come in to see me, I really usually hear, I don't know what I need. I definitely don't know what I want. And I don't even know if I know who I am anymore. So I really love walking with women through a journey of self-discovery. And as I was sitting with women and their experiences, I started noticing a lot of different themes. People-pleasing tendencies, boundaries issues, overcommitting, overfunctioning, leading to stress, burnout, exhaustion. And all of these things really stood out to me because they're all things that I struggle with in my own life. And so that's how I got really passionate about developing some trainings to help women better understand some of these issues in their lives and what to do about them. So today we are going to zero in on stress and how to change how we relate to the stress in our lives. So here's where we're going. We're going to understand the different types of stress and how they impact us on a physical, emotional, and mental level, how the brain and the body react to stress, and then some really practical, tangible strategies for how to break out of a stress cycle. Okay, I'm sure we've all heard about toxic stress, right? It's kind of a buzzword. But I want to give the disclaimer that stress in general isn't bad. Um, Stress isn't the bad guy. But first, it's important to understand why stress has gotten the reputation that it has. And it's because toxic stress really can negatively impact us, right? Um, I like to define toxic stress as when the stress of my environment overpowers my ability to cope with my circumstances. Okay, so when what's going on around me in my life feels so overwhelming that I just feel like I can't handle it, I can't do it, that's when we start to see toxic stress. So you can kind of see some of the physical side effects of stress are going to be headaches, upset stomach, difficulty sleeping, emotionally overwhelm, irritability, anger, behaviorally doom scrolling, mindless eating, um, some avoidant behaviors, and then mental health issues as well. Okay, so the impact of stress, of toxic stress, is going to hit everybody differently. Okay, how we handle stress in our lives is actually influenced by a number of different factors, like our biology. So, your genetic makeup contribute or impacts how stress affects you. Same with your culture. How does your culture make meaning out of certain things? Your own personal experiences. Maybe you have trauma in your past, that's going to play a role. And then your resources. Do you have help and support? So everyone interprets and handles stress uniquely based on these factors. But when we are exposed to toxic stress for extended periods of time, that's when we're going to see mental health issues like anxiety and depression. It weakens our immune system. It impairs our memory and our learning abilities, and then critical thinking skills. So, to understand that, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the neuroscience of stress. We're going to geek out on some neuroscience for a little bit. But Dan Siegel developed this really beautiful, easy model to give a good visualization of what's going on in our brain when we have a stress response. So we're going to start over here with our brain stem. That's the part of that's on your wrist, okay? This is our downstairs survival brain, and it is responsible for the automatic things that happen in our bodies, like breathing, our heart rate, the things that happen without us thinking about it. They just happen. It's also responsible for our survival responses, right? So fight, flight, freeze. We all have probably are familiar with these survival responses, right? So that's our downstairs brain. Then we get into our limbic system. This is our midbrain. And if anyone's seen Inside Out or Inside Out 2, which was so good, this is like the emotion center of the brain. So our emotions live in that limbic midbrain section. And then also, this is where our hippocampus and our amygdala are. So the hippocampus helps us form and save new memories by linking them to specific emotions. And then the amygdala is responsible for detecting danger. And then it sends a signal to our automatic downstairs brain to react accordingly. So, for example, when you were little, you probably weren't afraid of bees, right? You see the big pictures of like a friendly bumblebee. But let's say that you were stung by a bee, or maybe you saw someone else get stung by a bee. Well, when that happened, the hippocampus saves that memory and links it to the emotion of fear based on the pain that you felt during the sting. So then the next time you see the bee, your amygdala sees it as a potential threat, and you'll instinctively feel fear again. Okay. So when the amygdala perceives a threat, the body releases cortisol, right? The stress hormone. This is to get your heart racing, your breathing accelerates. It's engaging that survival part of your brain so that you can get away from the threat as soon as possible, right? Our fight flight response. This is also how our triggers are formed. Okay, so our brains perceive a threat and they respond based on previous experiences that we've had in our life. So our brains and our nervous systems are always on, scanning our environment for potential threats. And this is called neuroception. So when a boss yells at us, or maybe someone breaks up with us, our brain perceives a threat and stores the information a certain way based on our experiences. And this is how our triggers are formed. Okay. So now I want to talk about the prefrontal cortex. That's the upstairs, rational, logical thinking part of our brain that separates us from animals and any other species, because this is the part of our brain that helps us make meaning out of our experiences. It's also the part of our brain that helps us connect with others and is responsible for socializing. Okay, so what happens when we're triggered or when our brain perceives a threat, our prefrontal cortex actually goes offline a little bit. That's because it starts sending resources into these lower parts of our brain to get ready to act, to protect us if we're in danger. Now, if it does perceive a threat and we're in danger, we call that flipping our lid because the prefrontal cortex goes completely offline. Okay, now I've lost access to this logical thinking part of my brain, and I'm emotionally reacting, or I'm reacting out of a survival response. Okay. If we can determine in our situation that whatever's going on is actually not life threatening, and we can work to bring a sense of safety back to our body, our brain will actually go back online so that we can get that emotional brain and thinking brain working together again. Okay. So this is what's going on in our brain when we're in a stressful environment. But sometimes we get stuck in a stressful state, okay? When we're just consistently or habitually stressed out, even after a threat is over. And this is called a stress cycle. Okay, there's 3 stages. The first is the alarm stage. This is when you get triggered, your brain perceives a threat, your body starts pumping cortisol and adrenaline because it wants to get you moving, right, to respond to that threat. And I'm going to use an illustration for this, okay? So let's say you've done your bedtime routine, you're getting ready to get into bed, your head hits the pillow, you're about to fall asleep, and your house alarm goes off, okay? Your stress response in this situation is good. You want your body to be mobilized to respond. You want to be ready to call 911 or to get out of the house or do whatever you need to do to stay safe. So our triggers are like the alarm system in our house. They let us know that something's going on that we need to respond to. Then we move into the resistance stage. So once the initial threat is over, our nervous system like pumps the brakes on that energy. So let's say you walk through the house and you realize, oh, the dog tripped the alarm on accident. There's actually no threat. It's still going to take your body about 20 minutes to come back down from that rush of adrenaline. But eventually you fall back asleep. Everything's fine. Let's say you don't fall back asleep though. Maybe you have a toddler who wakes up crying, or you have a big presentation at work tomorrow and your brain starts spiraling. That's going to send another round of adrenaline through your body. So if your body does not settle back down into a calmer state, now you're headed into the exhaustion stage. And the exhaustion stage is when your body repeats this cycle over and over and over. You're kind of ping-ponging from alarm resistance back and forth. This is when we get toxic stress and it leads to burnout, okay? So sometimes there are things in our environment that are completely out of our control. You're in a season where you have young kids or teenagers. Your work is stressful, or maybe you're caring for a parent or a loved one. Okay, your circumstances contribute to keeping you in this stressful cycle. This is when you need to proactive and intentionally work to bring a sense of safety back into your system so that you can help it calm down. Okay, so how do I do that, right? Sounds so nice and easy, is it? I like to say it's simple. It's not always easy, right? When we're in a state of chronic stress, sometimes the things that are simple don't really feel easy. They're hard to get to. Um, but I want to give you three really tangible ways that are research backed ways to break out and complete a stress cycle so that you're not looping in it. Okay. The first one is going to be exercise. I think we all know this, right? Like exercise is good for us, sure, but it is the most well researched, effective way to break a toxic stress cycle and just across the board is going to positively impact us mentally, emotionally, physically. And it also gives us an experience of positive stress, which we'll talk more about in a minute. So go for a walk, take a class at the gym, dance in your living room in your underwear, do something to get your body moving for about 20 minutes, and you're going to notice a shift in your nervous system. Okay. Next is deep breathing. So, breath work has been around for centuries, and there's so many different techniques that are helpful. I once had a yoga teacher tell me the breath is the most powerful tool that we have at our disposal, and we have it with us at any time. So, learning how to use that breath to work for you is important. Every time that you inhale, your heart rate increases. Every time that you hold your breath or you exhale, it slows that heart rate down and signals to your body that it's time to relax. So you can do this just by elongating your hold and your exhale. So I'm going to teach you one really simple breathing technique that I love to use personally and with clients. But if you do a Google search, there's so many different techniques out there that you can learn. And I love to say everybody's different. Try what works best for you. Some breathing techniques might actually make you more stressed out or more activated, but you have to experiment and get curious to know what's actually helpful and what's going to make it worse. But for today, this one I call a two-set breath. You're going to inhale through your nose and fill your whole body with air. And once you reach the top, you're going to take one more tiny sip of air. And then you're going to exhale like you're breathing through a straw. So we're going to try two of these together right now. Okay, so go ahead and inhale through your nose. Tiny sip at the top. And exhale by blowing through a straw. Good. We're going to do one more. On your exhale, really focus on relaxing your body, settling in, slowing down. Okay, so let's go again. Good. Usually I will say repeat this for about 30 to 60 seconds, sometimes longer. Just do it until you really feel your body drop in. Okay. And then lastly, this is my favorite, a hug. So supporting your own weight, hugging someone who you trust for 20 seconds minimum or until you feel your body release. Okay. What happens when we hug someone else for 20 seconds or longer? Our body releases oxytocin, which is called the cuddle hormone, which I think is so fun. Oxytocin is going to directly combat stress. Okay. It increases positive feelings, helps us feel more connected, and it really brings that sense of safety back to our nervous system to say, hey, you're okay. Nothing's on fire. So try this out, maybe with a loved one, or a 20-second hug is pretty intimate. So make sure you have consent if it's someone you like. But go home and hug a spouse or a friend or someone and try it out. See what you notice. So here's three really easy research-backed ways to help bring our body into a state of calm again. And remember, stress is okay, but we don't want to stay in a toxic stress state for a prolonged period of time. Okay. All right. Lastly, I want to talk about eustress. We hear a lot about toxic stress. We don't hear a lot about eustress, which is such a shame because eustress is when you feel confident in your ability to handle whatever comes your way, regardless of your circumstances. Eustress is shown to build resilience as well as increase positive feelings of satisfaction and well-being. This this type of stress is energizing, it's empowering. It motivates us to take on challenges and to get stuff done. And it actually helps you maintain a sense of control and better manage your emotions when dealing with stressful situations. So, what are the benefits of eustress? You're going to see benefits physical, emotional, and mental as well. So, increased energy, motivation, a sense of contentment or optimism, fulfillment, and meaning. Who doesn't want that? But then also grit, confidence, resilience, better focus, right? Okay. So, all of these are going to directly fight symptoms of burnout. So, how do we get more eustress? Right? We've got plenty of ways to get toxic stress. So, how do we shift to experience more eustress? Best example again, exercise. Okay. Exercise is a way to challenge yourself in a positive way because being able to challenge yourself is how we grow, right? But how we view our challenges really matters. If we view stress as the bad guy and a threat and something to be avoided at all costs, we're actually more likely to internalize stress in our lives as negative or toxic. But if we shift our view and view stress for what it is, a normal biological and adaptive human response, um, we can see it as an opportunity to challenge ourselves and to grow. That's when we're going to experience more positive outcomes and build resilience. So, this is what I call having our stress work for us instead of against us. Okay. All right. So, it was a lot of information, kept it right at that 20-minute mark. But here's what you know now. You know the difference between toxic stress and eustress, right? Not all stress is bad. How the brain reacts to stress, some neuroscience behind what's going on in your brain in a stressful situation, and then how to break a stress cycle. So, next steps are really diving into how do I understand my own unique relationship with stress? What does it feel like for me and my body when I'm stuck in a stress cycle? Do I even know? What's it like when I'm experiencing eustress? Do I know what that feels like? So, if you are interested in learning more, Desert Wellness and I are teaming up again in September to host an in person workshop to dive deeper into all of this. Okay. And we'd love to have you join us. There will be yummy food. You will get a drink ticket. We are going to give you a beautiful self care night out with benefits that are going to last longer than a face mask. So, come join us. We're going to dive into better understanding your nervous system and how your body internalizes stress, expanding your ability to deal with stress and use it as a catalyst for growth, the difference between pseudo self care and actually true restorative self care, and understanding our emotions a little bit better. And then again, really practical tools to do all of this and bring it into your everyday life. So, you are not going to want to miss that. There should be a link in the chat where you can register. So just click that link in the chat to register that. It's September 19th, 5:30 to 7:30 at the forum in Chandler. So we would love to see you all there to dive a little bit deeper. And yeah, so as promised, question and answer at the end. Does anyone have any questions about anything that I talked about, or any thoughts or things you want to share? Go ahead and pop that in the chat, and I'll go ahead and respond to any questions or comments now. Okay. Well, hopefully this was informative and you learned a few new things about stress and about your brain and how it handles stress. And again, just a couple of really practical tools to try out in your life going forward. And there aren't any questions, I we would love to have you join in September. So hopefully I will actually get to see some of you face to face in September. Yes, you're welcome, Wendy. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Desert Wellness, for hosting me. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for coming. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you. I'll leave that chat and that link up for a little bit longer, just for whoever wants to register there. And we'll leave it in the chat and just for a couple more minutes as we close out. Yes, thank you, Jamie. Thanks for coming. So the workshop is really, it's not gender specific. Um, but it's maybe a little bit geared more towards women than men. So, but not necessarily. Anyone is welcome. Thanks, Lynette. Thanks for coming. All right. Thank you all. The chat will be up for another few minutes. So if you have any questions still, you can pop them in there. And then hopefully we see you all in September. Thanks.